This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us for this first edition of CBN NewsWatch for Monday, September 16th. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, new sexual assault allegations against Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Yet the story could be missing a vital piece of information. And what the attack on a Saudi oil refinery means to the world's oil supplies. Plus, a closer look at how pastors struggle and deal with pain. And The Oracle is the latest work by best-selling author of fiction to explain a biblical truth about the principle of Jubilee. We've got all those stories and much more in this edition of CBN NewsWatch. We begin this hour. Nearly a half dozen Democratic presidential candidates are calling on Justice Brett Kavanaugh to be impeached after new allegations of sexual assault from the New York Times. But the original story leaves out a major fact. Amber Strong has the story now from Washington.
According to a new book by a pair of Times reporters, a Yale classmate by the name of Max Stier, who worked to defend President Clinton during his legal battles in the 90s, approached the FBI during Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing to say he witnessed Kavanaugh sexually assault a fellow classmate. That accusation is similar to another made by Yale classmate Deborah Ramirez during Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation. Throughout the course of that emotional 2018 hearing, Kavanaugh was accused of assault by 3 women.
I've never sexually assaulted anyone, not in high school, not in college, not ever.
Ramirez was contacted by the FBI, but according to the Times, this alleged victim was not. And now some Democrats want to know why. It's more clear than ever that Brett Kavanaugh lied under oath. He should be impeached, and Congress should review the failure of the Department of Justice to properly investigate the matter, tweeted presidential candidate Julian Castro.
I strongly opposed him based on his views on executive power, which will continue to haunt our country, as well as how he behaved, including the allegations that we are hearing more about today.
But in a revised version of that New York Times report, the paper says the alleged victim declined an interview. And friends say she doesn't recall the incident at all.
I think this is the New York Times just being bitter enders. And at some point, they just have to let the anger go and recognize that the democratic process actually moves on.
President Trump also weighing in, saying Kavanaugh should sue for libel. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
President Donald Trump says America is locked and loaded after Saturday's attack on Saudi Arabia's main oil facility, and he's waiting on word from the kingdom before responding. U.S. officials believe Iran carried out the strike using 20 drones and a dozen cruise missiles. The damage to the backtracked oil refinery cutting the Saudis' daily oil output by nearly 6 billion barrels per day.
That's about 60% of the Saudi production. And when you talk about the global production, that's almost more than 5% of the global oil production.
The price of oil sparked sharply, gaining 10% or more. President Donald Trump said he will release oil from America's Strategic Petroleum Reserve if necessary. The Wall Street Journal reports the Saudis plan to get 1/3 of their oil output back online today, but the entire plant may take weeks to get back to full production. Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen claimed responsibility for the attack. The Trump administration says the attack was too large and too sophisticated for the Houthis, and the latest strike in an ongoing battle between Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the U.S. On the eve of Israel's elections, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is threatening action against Gaza, telling Israel's Channel 13 another conflict, quote, could happen at any moment. That's a follow-up to comments last week when he predicted Israel will be forced to overthrow Hamas, the terror group which rules Gaza. Netanyahu says Hamas is not stopping other terror groups like Islamic Jihad from launching rockets at Israel. Israeli voters go to the polls Tuesday, September 17th, to choose whether to keep Netanyahu in power or install a new government. Back here at home, California lawmakers passed a bill forcing taxpayer-funded universities in the state to offer free chemical abortion pills to students by 2023. Students for Life of America President Christian Hawkins says California lawmakers are recklessly experimenting with students' lives. She went on to say these toilet bowl abortions would create havoc on campuses as girls are sent to their dorm bathrooms to bleed and pass an aborted infant in the toilet without medical supervision or assistance. Strengthening to a hurricane, the latest tropical storm system, Humberto, is expected not to pose a threat to the already devastated Bahamas. Instead, AccuWeather meteorologists predict it will track close to Bermuda. It's moving northeast at 5 miles an hour with maximum sustained winds of about 85 miles an hour and could strengthen even more. Good news for the United States. An upper-level disturbance is expected to keep it moving further away from the East Coast. Coming up, finding ways to help pastors who are struggling with pain in their own lives. We got the story. Stay with us.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com. Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs, from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Check your local listings or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Harvest Church held a special service honoring Pastor Jared Wilson, who committed suicide last week. Pastor Greg Laurie spoke at the service and pointed to our constant need of Christ as we face life struggles. His battle renewed a national discussion about suicide, depression, and the pain in the church, even among leaders. John Jessup has the story of one pastor whose pain came from a secret that he'd carried since childhood.
Kim and Monty Weatherall enjoy spending time together, whether it's in church or working out at the gym. She's helped him tackle weight loss.
80 pounds, yes. I walked in there well over 300 and upwards of 320 pounds.
And also in dealing with a painful past.
When I got home and he told me what his plan was, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
I made a decision to end my life.
Monty resisted getting help because as a pastor, he's used to giving advice.
Most people in his life know Pastor Monty as a young, dynamic preacher, always armed with an encouraging word. What they didn't know was for years, he wore many masks, projecting different personas to hide a painful secret.
From 4 to 7 years old, I was abused over those 3 years by 2 male relatives.
He never told anyone about the abuse, fearing retribution. Instead, Monty hid the pain, pretending to be someone else.
For the rest of my life, I began to play these different characters because I was so uncomfortable with being myself.
It worked until the only character left was the man in the mirror.
I didn't realize that on some level I was blaming myself, but I had to give myself permission to realize that it wasn't my fault. That suicidal spirit that was on me, it just broke. But I knew that the journey wasn't over.
The road to recovery started on the outside with a goal of getting in shape to lay a foundation for his emotional healing.
I think psychologically, as I am being, tortured as a child by the abusers, I tried to really just hide all of that. Being overweight, out of shape, I made a decision that a part of taking my life back, I had to take my body back.
Monty found a counselor and worked through difficult sessions, recalling those early childhood memories. And just like female victims, it took decades into adulthood to begin the process.
The majority of women that I see who are violated as a child really aren't ready to start the healing process till they're at least 30.
Sexual violence has got to go.
In the #MeToo era, sexual abuse scandals have now hit evangelical circles with its own social media campaign, #Church2.
I regretfully had a sexual incident with a female high school senior in the church.
Challenging as it may be, Wheeler believes these revelations can help churches do better to address sexual abuse and reach victims.
What we are seeing is the community as a whole starting to at least willing to talk about this conversation. We're seeing that churches are now, I think the Me Too movement is helping some pastors realize that, oh my gosh, we do have a lot of survivors in our churches, and what are we doing and what can we do to help them heal?
That question is what motivates Monty Weatherall.
I know the shame, I know the courage that it took for those women and those men that are coming out to say this happened to me.
With so much interest in justice reform and redemption stories, he's concerned about neglecting the victim.
I'm glad that legislation is happening. I'm glad when authentic redemption has taken place. That's great, but we can't forget those boys, those girls, those men, those women that have been abused. And so I know why the Holy Spirit led me to write this book, for that reason.
That book, Taking My Life Back, documents how Monty went from suicidal thoughts
We are healed right now
to thriving and even forgiving his abusers.
For me, it started with a decision. I had to make a decision to forgive those that sexually abused me. And my abusers, they didn't know who I was going to become. They didn't know I would become a pastor that would help thousands. They didn't know I would even witness to them and lead them to Christ and baptize one of them.
For Kim, she says their marriage is stronger and they're happier than ever.
Sometimes I look at him and I don't even think it's the same person I married. He was wonderful then, but he's wonderful and healthy and whole now.
John Jessup, CBN News.
Jesus.
Reporting in Swansea, Illinois.
Still ahead, the biblical principle of Jubilee and its fascinating connection to world events.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
ancient mystery lies behind the events of our world, the leaders of our times, and the course of our lives. Could this mystery lie behind everything from world wars, current events, and even an American president?
We're talking about The Oracle, the latest book by best-selling author Jonathan Cahn. He sat down with the 700 Club's Pat Robertson to talk about how he uses fiction to explain the very real truths about God and his principles of Jubilee throughout time.
Imagine if there were scrolls that they open up at set days, and when they open up and read it and chant it, the things that they chant are coming true, start coming true in the world. If we could know that, you know, I mean, it sounds like it's science fiction. It's real. There are these scrolls, and this is called the Parashah mystery. And you're going to see throughout, when these key things happen, the words are appointed around the world even before it happens. So, I mean, and it's the other thing is that with a harbinger, the first time I ever came on it, you know, on the day was here. I was led, you know, the Oracle is real. I mean, it's kind of revealing all these things, but I framed it with a story to make it, you know, like the harbinger. So so it's an Oracle sharing, opening up these mysteries. There's these 7 doors, and each 7 doors has about maybe 8 mysteries. So there's so much, so we could probably just touch on it, but we can, you know, I'll give a sample.
How does Mark Twain figure out? I mean, he read Innocents Abroad. And,
yes.
Was he for history, or he's part of the Oracle?
He is. Listen, Mark Twain, we know he's a skeptic, yet God uses everything. And so, the opening of this thing, you know, Moses said, a stranger will come to the land, you know, and it's going to be devastated. It's going to be a desolation. Stranger's going to come, and he's going to bear witness in saying this land is hopeless, desolate. He says what the man's going to say. Amazing thing, it happens. The stranger comes to the land. It says after this happens, then God is going to start his bringing back the people. So the man makes a journey, and he gets there, and it's Mark Twain. And he's walking through the land, and he's with a notepad, and he's saying the exact words that Moses says he will say. I mean, literally, there's no blade of grass growing. He says everything. And then the thing is that right after he comes, that is when this all happens. He comes in the first year of Jubilee of this restoration, 1867, and all these mystical things, in a sense, start happening in the land. A man with a measuring line, the release of the land. You just.
Tell me about the measuring line. There was a guy that was going to survey the temple.
Yeah, well, a biblical sign of when God's going to do something is, in the Bible, it's that he says, I saw a man with a measuring line. It's usually an angel. But actually, a man comes with a measuring line, measures out Jerusalem in the same 1867, same time that Mark Twain, actually, they stay at the same hotel. It's all begins happening, and then all sorts of things happen. The city of Jerusalem has been covered up for 2,000 years. That man with the measuring line uncovers it in the year of Jubilee. It says, the land will return. All the things happen. Mark Twain writes the book, his first major book. It's fulfilling biblical prophecy, and then it all happens. The name Mark Twain, you know, for 2,000 years, the Jewish people have been praying, Lord, hear our prayer and be merciful and bring us back to the land. Hear our prayer, be merciful. Mark Twain's real name, Samuel Clemens, means the Lord has heard and has been merciful. I mean, who can come up with that?
Samuel Clemens.
It's Hebrew. It's Hebrew. And so this happens like that. So the Oracle, as the mysteries, for instance, there's a word, you know, that was appointed for the day that Israel would come back into the world. You know, and the thing is that appointed from ages past. So, and what was the word? Israel's about to come back. When they announce it, it's on the Sabbath. So the Sabbath, there's a word. What was the word that God appointed? The word was the prophecy from Amos. It says, in that day, I will raise up the fallen tabernacle of David. Right. I will put them back in the land. And so they're chanting this all over the world from the scrolls about the resurrection of Israel, and it's happening at the same moment. There's something called the Jubilean Code, and that from Moses, that the first time in the Bible that God ever says to Israel, "You shall return to your ancestral land," as a plural. The word "you shall return" is Hebrew tashuvu. Every Hebrew letter has a number value, and when you write a Hebrew year, you use the letters. It comes out to a year. The word "you shall return" comes out to the year 1948. The year that Israel returns is from Leviticus, from Moses, 3,000 years.
1948.
You shall return equals 1948. Yes. Yeah. And then, I mean, and if you look at this, you know, it happens like clockwork. You had 1867, count 50 years, 1917. the land returned to the Jewish people. Balfour Declaration, the English Empire. And so you got the land returning. Count another 50 years, it takes you to 1967. Did anything happen of return?
Six-Day War.
Six-Day War, and it ends up with the Israeli soldiers entering the gates. It says everyone shall return to their possession. First time in 2,000 years. And this has to happen for Jesus to return, because he said, in Jerusalem, you'll say it. But the sign of the Jubilee is...
And Gorin had...
It's the trumpet. You know, it says that you'll sound the trumpet and they shall return. Well, did anything ever happen at a prophetic moment like this? Well, when the Israeli soldiers get to the Temple Mount, they hear the sound of the trumpet. Now, this guy sounds the trumpet, but the mystery is that, you know, it says on the Jubilee, the land will return to its original state.
Yeah.
What was the original state of the Temple Mount? It was a threshing floor, and the word in Hebrew for threshing floor is goren. The guy who sounds the shofar is named Rabbi Goren,
and it means threshing floor.
He means Rabbi Threshing Floor, and so he sounds it, and he was born in 1917, the other Jubilee. So he's a child, and he was born for that moment. He's 50 years old now, sounding the 50th year sign, and the other he has the Goren also means something else. It means the horn. Rabbi Horn, sound the horn.
That's when the troops have come into
at the moment.
Yeah, they won the battle.
At the exact moment he got in. So God has the sound. I mean, showing that this is me. You know, I'm doing this. But then if you go, and I'm just, you know, there's 7. I'm just touching on the doorknobs. I mean, there's so much.
Coming up, how even our president may be a part of fulfilling God's purposes for Israel and his church. More of our interview with Jonathan Cahn after this.
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
We're back now with more of Dr. Pat Robertson's interview with author Jonathan Cahn about his latest book, The Oracle. He walked us through the 50 years of Jubilee through Israel's modern history. Now for more on that and what it means for the church and the return of Christ.
The one thing that Israel didn't get, in the Jubilee, it says you get the legal right to your land. It's not that you just go there, you're recognized. Well, Jerusalem was never recognized by the world. They refused it. And that lasted until Donald Trump gave the Jerusalem Declaration saying we recognize, first time in modern times, first time since ancient times. I mean,
well, does his name mean something?
Yes, because this was when did it happen? When it happened, well, what's the next Jubilee? If you do 1967 and you fast forward, it goes to 2017, and that's exactly when he did it, when it went forth, Jubilee. But here's you mentioned it. You know, what is the Jubilee? Jubilee is you have the Jubilee and you have the trumpet shall sound. Trumpet is appointed to the Jubilee. What does our president's name mean in English? It means the trumpet. The trumpet. So Donald Trump, and when did he come to power? the year of Jubilee. And so it says the trumpet shall sound, the trump shall sound throughout the land. Well, he's been sounding ever since, you know. And it says when the trump sounds, the land goes back. Well, the trump sounded and Jerusalem went back to the Jewish people. I mean, who could put this together, Pat? I mean, you see, he had to win that election because he was the Trump of the Jubilee. You know,
I was reading Ezekiel about, I have a prophecy for the mountains of Israel, and men will come upon you. You remember?
Yeah, well, like a lion. Yes, okay. On the mountain, yes. This all goes with the prophets of Israel. I mean, well, I'll give an example of that. And there's more on Trump, but the example, and this goes to the future too. What's going to happen? But Isaiah says that the Lord will fight for those mountains like a lion and a young lion. And the amazing thing, Pat, as I looked at it in the 6-Day War, when they're fighting all these key people who were soldiers in that war who were named the Lion. And the first two people who went in the gate on the mountain was Colonel Mata Gore and Arak Akman. It's in Gordon's documentary. And the amazing thing is, their name, it says he will fight as a lion and a young lion. Their names together mean the lion and the young lion.
Come on.
And the gate they went through was the Lion's Gate because, you know, Messiah came the first time to the gates as a lamb. He's coming in as a lion, and that's a sign, you know. And there's another thing, we mentioned Trump, you know, and it's not like Trump is reading Leviticus and saying, I'm going to fulfill this, you know. We can safely assume that. But how God used it. Well, the thing is that when he gave that, the Bible says that, you know, he followed this pattern of this ancient king of Cyrus. Even the document, I mean, it's amazing. And he wasn't trying to do this, but what the Bible says that Israel will go through a period of 70 years. At the end of the 70 years, the king will issue a declaration which is going to recognize Jerusalem, which is Cyrus. But could Donald Trump actually be doing this without realizing it? Well, is there a 70-year period? If you go back from when he gave the declaration, count back 70 years, it takes you to 1947, the very year that Israel is voted into existence. And I look deeper. If you count from the very day that they voted Israel in, on the Hebrew calendar, it's Kislev 17. Count 70 years from the day, and it says after. So take the next day, Kislev 18. What day is it? It comes out to December 6, 2017. That's the exact date that he issued the declaration, after 70 years to the day. I mean, to the day. And the thing is that it also deals with the future. I know you read it. I'm so glad. They say you read things just like that. But the sixth door deals with the future. And one of the mysteries, really, Pat, of the whole end times is, you asked about the Jubilee, is that it's the mystery of return. And you see, whatever it was, the Jewish people have to return to where they were at the beginning of the age. And so they were in Jerusalem. They were in Israel. So they're back, you know. But it's not just that. It's the whole world. 2,000 years ago, the world, what was it? It was pagan. It was anti-Christian, unchristian. What we're watching in the world is the mystery that the world culture is returning to where it was. Paganism. We're we're watching it every day. It's part of the mystery. Now, there can be revival. We pray for it. But the world culture is returning to what it was. So that's all part of it. But the church 2,000 years ago was also in its original state, was powerful, dynamic, you know, Book of Acts, radical. God is calling the believers, this is our return, to become that again. And as we see persecution, it's okay. That's going to lead us to be, those who stand will be like that, will be as it was back then. God's calling us to live like the Book of Acts, you know. So in the same time, the dark is darker, but we have our own Jubilee.
Now, Cahn's book is a fictional story that helps to explain the biblical and historical facts of Jubilee years. There is much more of the interview at cbnnews.com. You can find the Oracle wherever books are sold. That is going to do it for this first edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel at any time or online at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. And, of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll see you tomorrow.